Hey everybody, I'm Jason, and this is Jay's Project Garage. This is like my 5th attempt at making this video. I tried all day yesterday, I got busy, we had to take the kids and go get Halloween costumes, and we went to Sam's Club, walked 85 miles through that place. It's fun though. They got a lot of stuff. But last weekend I didn't make a video. Saturday we went to the Covered Bridge Festival, and for anyone that doesn't know what a covered bridge is, this is it. But Park County is known for having the most bridges of any county in the United States. They have 31. There's a lot of covered bridges throughout Indiana. I mean, there's a lot of streams and creeks, and back in the 1800s, that's just what they did around here. They built covered bridges instead of just a regular bridge. Seems like an awful lot of work, but we went to Mansfield. It's just a big flea market. That bridge is like 260 some feet long. I did look it up. The state with the most covered bridges is actually Vermont. They've got like 100 of them. I don't have any idea how many there are in the state of Indiana, but there's a whole bunch all through the southern and kind of the western part of the state. There's a bunch, but Vermont gets the prize. Way to go, fellas. And then on Sunday, I went and took care of, I got 150 bags, 40-pound bags of wood pellets for the in-laws. Went and picked them up, took them to their house, got them all unloaded and stacked in their garage, so they're good on heat for the winter. I'm good in the house. I still need probably another rick out here in the shop, and I need to get more for the in-laws. Not the in-laws, the neighbors. Got in-laws on the brain for some reason. I gotta go over there later on today. I'm gonna pick up another trailer load of ash. Their neighbor's been cutting a whole bunch of dead trees down, and he stacks it up for me, and I just go over randomly and load it up. So I'm gonna go get a trailer load of it. Today, we're gonna do a tear down on a locked up Ford 5-liter. And we'll talk more about it as I get it torn down. Before we get started, I kind of wanted to show you my work area. So I got the engine all set up on the engine stand that I just picked up at a flea market for 20 bucks. I'll tell you about the flea market a little bit more here in just a minute. But this is one of the ones we went to Ohio and picked up. Gave 100 bucks for it. I got 2 of them, 100 bucks a piece. And like I said in another video, when I'm buying a core, that's all I'm willing to pay is core prices, because I don't know if they're any good. But I got it home. One of them spun. One of them doesn't. This is the one that doesn't. But set up your work area. Have a table where you can put parts. Keep your tools off of that table. And when you're working on cars, you need something like this. It rolls around. You can adjust the height. You can roll it over the fender. You can keep all your stuff on it instead of keeping it on the fenders or on the core support or wherever. And you constantly have to worry about stuff falling. This is awesome. So look for something like this, or you can even make something like that. I think I got this one on the Snap-on truck. It's probably a Blue Point or something, but I actually have 2 of these. I have one that's at work, use it all the time, and then daily for doing build-ups and stuff, 'cause it's great for laying bolts and stuff out on. And I've got my tool cart with all my tools and everything in it. But I roll my tool cart up to the car, and I'll roll this up there, and I'll lay all my parts out, screws and clips and bolts and all that kind of stuff. It's all nice and neat and organized, and I can put a car together pretty quick. So it's just something for you guys to think about. I think for the sake of time, all we're going to do on this thing today is just take the top end apart. The whole point of this is you'll see these revival videos a lot where the guys will come across a car that's out in the woods or in a barn or whatever, and the engine's stuck. And they'll dump a bunch of stuff down in the cylinders to get the thing broke loose. I want to see what the cylinders look like before they do all that, because I'm curious what kind of damage they may be causing and what the long term of the engine could possibly be. They finally get the thing started up and it scores the hell out of the cylinder walls or just eats the cam or whatever. The thing's not going to run for 10,000 miles, and yes, they got it running, but they potentially did more damage if they had just taken it apart and gone through it, even just a re-ring and bearing job. Then the engine could last long time. And obviously they're not all like that. A lot of them just have a small ring ridge or something from just a little bit of rust, or the rings are just a little bit stuck and they pop them loose and everything's fine. But I want to see how bad this one is. Now the fact that the other engine spun, and the fact that I got these things out of a barn, I'm gonna guess that whatever moisture got into these was just for like humidity in the air or whatever. That's just a guess. It could have been outside and gotten some rain in it. I honestly don't know. I got these from a guy that bought the property, and they were in the barn, and he knew absolutely nothing about them. Threw them on Marketplace, and stupid me went and bought them. But the first thing we're gonna do is I wanna pull the spark plugs and see what they look like, because that can really tell you a lot. So I'm gonna go and get these old plug wires and stuff off here, and I'm gonna start pulling the plugs, and I'll show you as I get them out. Okay, so I got all the plug wires pulled loose. Something on Fords that you want to remember is the, well, 302s anyway, and 351s, well, the majority of them. Number 1's going to be on the passenger side front. You got 1, 2, 3, 4. On the driver's side, 5, 6, 7, 8. And the distributor is going to turn backwards. It's going to turn counterclockwise, so keep that in mind if you're ever trying to time one of these things. But I got the front spark plug pulled out. This is a tapered seat peanut plug. So if you ever hear someone call it that, you'll understand. Earlier Fords, 79 and back, 80 and back. I think when they switched from the two-piece rear main seal to the one-piece, they revised a lot of stuff. I think that's when they made the change on these. The older ones are going to be a lot fatter plug. It's going to have a gasket seat. I'll look around and see if I have one of those in just a few minutes. But we're going to keep pulling these plugs out and get a look at them. But that's number 1. And it really doesn't look too bad. But just lay them out on the bench in order so you can kind of remember where they came from. Number 2, looks like it's got a little bit of oil on it. It's not bad. Now I already went through and I put PB Blaster on the distributor, and I used a pipe wrench and I got it busted loose. Oh, there's a little bit of rust on that one, but it's not horrible. If I kept every piece from every engine I tore down, this shop would be full to the ceiling. So I just kind of pick and choose. These plug wires are actually in halfway decent shape, so I'll probably keep them. I'll throw them on a shelf just as a what if. And same with the distributor. I'm going to put it on the shelf with some other ones I got. If the distributor isn't any good, they may still have some parts in it that I may eventually need. The housing itself looks pretty decent. And it's going to have roller distributor gear on it. I definitely want to keep that. If you just grab a distributor, like an old points distributor, and you throw it in a roller engine, that gear is going to eat itself because it's not compatible with the material the camshaft's made out of. That one's not bad. It's got a little bit of rust on it, but I haven't seen any that are like, holy shit, just yet. But we went to the Covered Bridge Festival with some friends of ours. They're actually our neighbors right next door. They brought their 2 girls with them. My son didn't have any interest in going, so we just took our youngest daughter because my oldest is at school. There's number 5. It doesn't look all that bad. But it's fun. They got like fair food and all kinds of stuff there, and the women really like it. It's just the fact that it's just a big flea market. It's just a bunch of Chinese stuff, and it's the same booth over and over again. So my buddy Eric and I lost interest fairly quick, but like I said, we were there for like 5 hours and we walked 1,200 miles. That one looks pretty decent too. I think, for the sake of time, we're just going to pull the heads off of this thing today. We're going to talk about the valve train a little bit when I get to it. Ooh. Number 7 doesn't look very happy. There's quite a bit of rust on that one. Can you guys see that? And the lighting in here sucks. Got some stuff to keep in mind on the valve train on these things. I've got a bunch of stuff I got to get done this afternoon. I got to finish up the goat barn, and like I said, I got to work on firewood, so I've just got a little bit of time this morning to make this video. And there's number 8. It's not horrible. There's just a little bit of rusting on all of these things, but none of them are like really, really bad. Like there's water standing in one of the cylinders. Number 7 was probably the worst one. And it's pretty grungy. But let's see what that cylinder actually looks like. Okay, so we talked about these valve covers before. And I kind of misspoke a little bit. These valve covers, as far as the HO was concerned, the only time I've ever seen them was starting in '94 on the Mustangs. These valve covers were actually used before that, back into the 80s on non-HO engines. And you'll know if it still has the intake and stuff on it, if it's HO or non-HO. HOs will have the throttle body on the passenger side. Non-HOs, it'll be coming out the driver's side. So Panther chassis cars and all the other Fox chassis, the Cougars, the Thunderbirds, that kind of stuff, they're going to have the non-HO. And a lot of them will have these valve covers on them. The reason I said I thought this was out of a 94 or 95 is because it has a Fox style oil pan on it, and it's a roller. The Cougars, the Thunderbirds, they wouldn't have had roller valve train. They would have been flat tappet because they were non-HO. So that's just a little more detective work. But we're going to get this other valve cover off, and we're going to look at the valve train, and I'll talk to you a little bit about the rockers and that kind of stuff. Valve covers are off. Okay, so in the 60s, Ford used this style rocker. It's referred to as a rail type. This part right here on each side, that's what locates it on the valve and keeps it from moving around. That, and they kind of had a cast-in guide plate as part of the cylinder head where it wouldn't let the push rod move around a whole lot. These are actually good rockers. Very uncommon to see one of these that's broken. 71, 72, something like that, they switched and they started using a stamped steel style rocker. This design is actually borrowed from the 385, 429, 460, and the 335, 351 Cleveland modified in 400. I'll get one of these apart and I'll show you. Okay, so all through the 70s and through the end of production, this is the rocker setup they used. You can see the fulcrum. See that squared off part in the bottom? Rides on this channel that the bolts go down through. This is what keeps the rocker from twisting. So if you ever get one of these things that's in pieces and you've got rockers and that kind of stuff, make sure these are in there. Otherwise the rocker can actually twist and pop off the valve or the push rod and cause all kinds of crazy stuff. So the 335 and the 385, instead of having this, since they're a canted valve or a poly angle setup, they're going to have where the bolt goes through for the rocker, they're going to have two little cast pieces that come up, and that's what's going to locate the fulcrum. And they also had a bridge. A lot of them had a bridge that went across. See how these, in the top of the fulcrum, see that channel that's cut in it? It would have a bridge that went across that the bolt goes down through, up, across, back down, and into the other rocker, and that would also help locate them. So they had two ways to keep the rocker from twisting. These are good rockers. I've seen guys run the hell out of these things. 5.0 Tussin does it all the time. He just spins the shit out of all his stuff, but I have seen these things break. You have oil starvation. That's a really big fulcrum that's riding against the rocker. this will actually eventually eat through the bottom of the rocker. That was Smokey Yunick's big complaint with the 335 engines, was their rockers, and it was this design. He said otherwise it was a good engine, but he hated the valve train. Okay, push rods. These are grungy. This thing's filthy. It's been sitting without an intake on it for so long, it's just, I don't know what's crud from it running and crud from it just sitting. Push rods are going to be a different length than the early ones. Normally they're shorter because the lifter body is taller and they've changed the rockers. I don't think, well, scratch that rocker thing because I'm not 100% positive on that. But I do know that the push rod length changed because of the roller. So if you got a non-roller and a roller, you can take the push rods out and you compare them and you can see the difference. Eventually I'll do a full-on comparison of all this kind of stuff and I'll show you all the differences. Okay, one thing about Ford this style valve train on Fords, you notice when you look at the push rod, you can't see a spot where it's been wearing on like a guide plate or against the head or anything. These rockers do a really, really good job of locating themselves and keeping the push rod located. They're way more stable than the old ones were. The old ones could move around and twist and do all kinds of stuff. These pretty much stayed in line and kept the push rod in line. So you can really rev the crap out of these things and not have to worry about the valve train stability. You know, obviously they have their limit and then you need to go to a roller, but we'll talk about all that stuff in another video. Okay, here's another way to tell. See the length of this coil wire? And with this end of the engine, this coil wire is long enough to reach over to the fender apron where the coil would have been mounted on a Fox body. Or an SN95, which is still a Fox body. It's just they refer to it as a modified Fox. So technically the Fox body ran from 78 to 2004, but they call the 94 to 04 cars SNs, or New Edge, starting in 99. A truck would have had a shorter coil wire on it because most of the time the coil was mounted on the engine itself. Another way to be a detective. All right, moment of truth. It's time to take the head bolts out of this thing. No idea if it still has antifreeze in it or not. If you don't have one of these, get one. They're badass. I kind of wish I had two of them, one at work and one here. I'm still old school at work. I'm using an air one. But I'm going to finish getting these head bolts out and we'll pop the heads off and let's see what we got. All right, boys and girl. Don't forget Gail. It's time to take one of these heads off. You guys ready? Oh, God. That's, I'm going to get the other head off and then I'll show you guys. I am seeing some stuff in here that's got me thinking this engine's been hurt before. Oh, that's not good. Starting with the fact it's got 86 cylinder heads on it. This is an oddball. Hang on a second, I'll show you guys what I found. Not good, not good, not bad. Not good. Standing water. Not bad. Not good. Not horrible. There's some oil in there. Well, that was a disappointment. I mean, the engine's still standard bore. And yeah, the cylinder walls are kind of cruddy. But this thing's totally rebuildable. Problem is, somebody's been into this thing before. It's got Velcro Prento Seal head gaskets in it. It didn't have Ford valve cover gaskets. It has E6 cylinder heads on it. So this is an 86 HO, the weird one. The one with completely flat top pistons and the funky combustion chamber. And I'll show you guys more of that here in just a second. So this is what happens a lot. You go and get an engine and you think you know what you're looking at. Based on, you know, let's maybe valve covers and that kind of stuff. You think you know what you got. I saw the roller stuff and I saw the valve covers and it told me 94, 95. I was wrong. Somebody's been into this thing before and it's like they kind of hodgepodge some parts together. It's hard telling what those valve covers are off of. It's hard telling how many different vehicles this engine's actually been in. But that's the kind of thing you can run into on a revival. You pull a couple spark plugs, they don't look all that bad. Some of the guys use borescopes, they look down in there, if you don't look at the right cylinder, it's like, oh, this isn't too bad. So they go hog wild and they get the thing broke free. This engine would have ate itself. As bad as the cylinder walls are, it would have ate itself in short order. I'm not anti-revival at all. I think it's awesome. I used to do that stuff all the time back in the day. I used to hire myself out for people. Hey, your car been sitting around for 15, 20 years, bring it to me and I'll go through it and I'll get everything working again. And I did quite a few of them, and it's fun. It's like playing detective and trying to figure out what's wrong with it and everything else. It's fun. So I'll take you guys over here to the engine and I'll show you the pistons and the cylinder heads and why 86 was so weird. Why, oh why Ford ever did this, I'll never know. But you notice there's no valve reliefs in this piston. It just has a little bit of a dish. This is about as true of a flat top as you can get. And you see how far the valves are sunk up into the head and how small the combustion chamber is? This is just a super weird setup. They did it for emissions. They must have found something in testing that told them that this would work, but I don't understand it. And that was a 1 year only deal, thank God. In 87, they came out with an all new cylinder head. It's the E7 TE that everybody knows. The one that 5.0 Tussin has done great stuff with. I mean, I was running in the 6s with a set of mildly ported E7s. I don't know how that guy does it. But I'm not worthy. So this thing is like I said, is totally rebuildable. I don't think the block is junk. I really don't see any reason to go a whole lot further with it. If the cylinder walls had been garbage, I still could have salvaged a lot of parts out of it. I mean, you got a front cover, you got roller lifters and spider and dog bones. Heads are crap. Those things are going to scrap. I still got an oil pan. Still got a crankshaft, still got a set of connecting rods. But like I said, this thing's totally rebuildable. Change the pistons, and it's no different than any other 5 liter. And I've got pistons on the shelf. So let me know what you guys want me to do with this thing. You want me to clean it up, see how bad cylinder walls are, and see if we can get it running? I mean, I'll put it on a run stand. I'm not scared. I got plenty of these oil pans and stuff. If we went out kicking the rods out of it, I don't care. Let me know. You want to do an engine blow-up video? Because I still got that Oldsmobile. I got a bird flying around in my shop. So a little bit more of the history of the Ford 302. I think, and I've said it before, I think this engine did more in racing than any other engine, especially in the 60s. 73 IndyCar wins, 4 Indy 500s. And you'll say, well, that was a Ford race engine. It was based on that block. It was based on a 260 production block. It had worked, but basically stock Hypo 289 connecting rods in it. 3 Trans Am championships, 24 hours of Le Mans, Daytona. It won races all over the world. And the shame is that these things get pulled out and sent to the scrapyard because they're junk. They're just going to split. You can't make any power with them. These things are super easy to make power with. It's no different than anything else. Heads cam intake, 400 horsepower, super easy. I've done it 100 times. Dyno proven, 400 horsepower, and you can jump in the thing and drive it anywhere you want to go. Dead nuts dependable. The last one I built for a guy, been running around for a couple years now, beats the crap out of it everywhere he goes. Hanging tough. Made 341 horsepower at the tire. If you do the math, that's just a little bit shy of 400 horsepower at the crank. They're good engines. They shouldn't be written off. Luckily, the guys in the know keep the candle burning for these things, and they still run them like 5.0 Tussin and all his buddies. But if you're ever out and about, or you're on Marketplace, or you're in a conversation on Facebook and you hear somebody say 8.2 deck, 4.5 liters and 8.2 deck. It's the deck height. It's from the center line of the crankshaft to the top of the deck, 8.2 inches. 9.5 deck, 351 Windsor. 9.2 deck could be an aftermarket block or a Cleveland. So if you ever hear somebody call something an 8.2 or 9.5 or 9.2, Ford guys don't normally say small block, big block. I got an 8.2 deck. I got a 9.5 deck. I got a 9.2 deck. You know what I mean? I don't know, we might get into a little bit more today, but I'm gonna sign off for this morning. Okay, so I've got stuff to do. I'm gonna be dodging raindrops all day. I've gotta go get like I said, I gotta go get a trailer load of wood from across the road from my in-laws. I need to go take care of, they've got a saltwater tank, and they're kind of new at it. My wife and I are gonna go over and test their water for them and make sure everything's cool. Get a trailer load of wood, and I gotta get going on the goat barn. I can work out in there when it's raining because I'm gonna be inside. I'm just basically building stalls, and half of it's gonna be chickens, the other half's gonna be goats. So the greatest part of it is I'm not gonna have any chickens in the shop this winter. I'm pretty excited about that. But the swap meet. So I went to swap meet about a month ago in Franklin, Indiana. It's 25 minutes or so from here. Love swap meets, hate swap meets, because basically you're looking at the same thing over and over again. You know, how many cast iron small block Chevy intakes laying on the ground for 50 bucks or 60 bucks can you look at over and over and over again? But there are, every once in a while, come across a booth that has good stuff. So I bought that engine stand for 20 bucks, thought that was a really good deal. Lubed up the wheels, got everything working again. Bought a harmonic balancer puller set. It's a Harbor Freight, but I only paid $5 for it, so that was pretty good. It's brand new in the box, never even been used. I buy all my flapper discs and cut off wheels and stuff at swap meets because they're a quarter of the price of going and buy them at the store. They're not the highest quality, but they work pretty darn good. So what else did I get? Swap meets are shrinking. Seems like with Marketplace and Craigslist and eBay, a lot of the big, like the Marion County swap meet that used to be here in Indianapolis, well, I'm not in Indianapolis, but in Indianapolis, used to be huge, and it just shrunk and shrunk and shrunk, and it died. But the one in Franklin's actually really good. It's a pretty big swap meet, and there's a lot of stuff there. It just kind of seems like it's the same thing over and over again. The All Ford swap meet in Columbus, Ohio is coming up Thanksgiving weekend. I may go to that one again. That thing used to be monstrous. It was in like 4 or 5 different buildings. The car corral, Cars for Sale, was in its own building. It was huge. Last year I went, it was in 2 buildings. And the prices people were asking for stuff was astronomical. I mean, just unbelievable. Tell you, I could almost buy the stuff new for that. But it is what it is. That's kind of the problem with being a Ford guy, or Ford guys in general. Sometimes you run across deals, like I'll run across stuff, I'll buy parts from a GM guy that has absolutely no idea what it's worth, or doesn't care what it's worth and just wants to be rid of it, and I'll happily take it. But the price is not everything's made out of gold, just saying. But back to the Ford at Indy. They started development on the Indy engine pretty much immediately after the 221 and the 260 became available. And the engine in the phase 1 or stage 1 was very production based. I think they wound up making 300 and some horsepower with it. The block itself was revised. I think it had 6 bolts per cylinder holding the heads on. But they revised the front of the engine for different style water pumps and the gear drive and all that kind of stuff. But it was very production based, and here's a picture of it. And then they pretty much immediately moved to the stage 2, which wound up making 375 or 400 horsepower, somewhere in there, with overhead cams. I'll see if I can find a picture of it and post it. But that engine did it very well, and that was the kind of the predecessor to what would become the Cosworth Ford, which was highly successful. I mean, probably one of the most successful Indy engines in history, with numbers of wins and consecutive wins. Mario Andretti, his one and only Indy 500 was Ford powered in 1969 with a production based Indy engine. Fact. 73 IndyCar wins, 4 Indy 500s, wins all over the world. And we'll talk more and more about all that kind of stuff. I'll start plugging in little tidbits as we go. And then we'll probably wind up tearing this thing down the rest of the way to see what the bottom end looks like. I'm confident that the rods and pistons and everything or the rods and the crankshaft are going to be savable. I'm sure the block is. The pistons, nobody wants those. But there's a lot of good stuff here. It's definitely worth the $100. So that's it. I got stuff to do for the rest of the day. That's it. So you guys get out in the shop and work on your projects. You have a great day, and I will see you probably next weekend.